Welcome, I'm Bev Adams. I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up. I'd like to show you this card today. It uses Humming Along, which is one of our new cling stamps, and my cardstock is Berry Burst 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. This layer is actually some vellum that is a standard layer for me, 5 1/4 by 4. And then this is Calypso Coral, 2 3/4 by 4 1/4, and a piece of Whisper White. This is the thick Whisper White that is 2 1/2 by 4. You could also use watercolor paper. My ink colors are Calypso Coral, Call Me Clover, Sahara Sand, and Berry Burst. I will need the Swirls and Curls Textured Impressions embossing folder. This is carried over from the holiday catalog, and I am so glad. I totally love this folder. I use it often, and then I'll be using some rhinestone jewels. And I will be using an aqua painter and some Wink of Stella. The first thing I want to do is emboss the vellum, so I will need a cutting plate and the embossing folder. This is the standard embossing folder that will use 2 cutting plates, but it does have a really deep texture to it, and vellum can be a bit brittle, so I'm going to just spritz it a little bit. You can use water, you can use alcohol. I'm just using Stampin' Mist because I always have that in a spritzer in my stamp room. So I'm going to put that on my platform and cover it with a second cutting plate and run it through. While that's drying, I want to do my stamping. I actually made some card fronts of this card for a swap I will be going to. And so since I was making so many, I definitely wanted to use my Stamparatus. And because if I were to put this piece up in the corner, this flower would be where the hinge is, and this wing would be really close to the hinge up here. So I took a piece of plastic. This is actually template plastic that I got from the fabric store, but I couldn't find it, so I cut myself a piece of cardstock. You could also use window sheet. You just want something that's about the thickness of the paper, and I have 1 inch and 1 inch, and it fits on my platform. So that's all that I needed. And so I want my flower to be about here. And I also want my leaf right in here. And I want those as close as I can get them. So I'm going to pick up the leaf and the flower, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp those in Sahara Sand. Then I want the hummingbird to be really close, right about there. If I were doing a lot of them, as I did, all I need to do is put my paper back in, and my images are already where I want them. And I'm ready to do some watercolor. So I'm going to pick up some ink of the Sahara Sand, and I'm using the aqua painter, and I'm putting a fair bit of water on here, and I want to color the beak and this part of the flower, and then I want to get kind of a loose wash on the body of the bird. I think I need to pull in a piece of scratch paper. And I do want to have a little bit of a difference of color between those two sections. And to clean off the brush, you just brush your paper. I'm going to use another corner of the block to pick up some of the Call Me Clover. And I'm using Call Me Clover for the leaf, and I found a loose wash here works really nicely. You can certainly make a little part of this darker to shade it a little bit better. Tiny bit of the flower there. And I want to use the same Call Me Clover on the wings. If you're using watercolor paper, this is actually a little bit more forgiving because of the texture and the ability to absorb water. The thick watercolor paper, the thick Whisper White, if you scrub it too much, you're going to end up with kind of pilling, so you do want to be careful about that. The Calypso Coral for the flower. Oh, I need more water. And you may, if I, it looks like I got away with it. Sometimes when that happens, you'll have a fairly significant edge that's hard to work in, so it doesn't show. If you're worried about that hard edge, you can actually, let me do it on this petal, you can actually just use plain water, especially on the watercolor paper, and get it a little bit wet, and then when you come in with the ink, it flows a lot nicer. And that's a little bit safer if you're unsure about watercolor. And again, if you want to add a little bit extra color, pick up some Berry Burst. And I'm using this for the neck of the bird. And I found myself liking the darker color, but it made the eye kind of disappear. So I'll come back in with a journal pen, moving those out of the way, but I want to keep my Call Me Clover. I do want to get a little sparkle, so I'm using Wink of Stella and just kind of scribbling over the red part and the wings here. I have another scrap of Whisper White, and so I'm going to stamp Thank You. And I'm just going to use my block for this. And I'll punch that out. This is the Pretty Label Punch. And I'm using a sponge dauber that I still have some ink left over, but pick up a little extra ink, just going around the edge, just to give some definition, because I'm really putting this white on white. Okay, I think I'm ready to assemble my card. The first thing I want to do is put my vellum on here. Now, vellum can be kind of tricky for adhesive. If I were to use snail adhesive or even glue dots, it would show up for sure. One of the things you can do is pull in your silicone mat, lay down some of the multi-purpose liquid glue, and pull it up with a piece of sponge, and making sure you're on the opposite side, just kind of daub on the adhesive overall to this piece. I do find that it uses a lot of adhesive this way. Because it is being absorbed into that sponge. And having said that, you do want to be a little bit generous with the adhesive, because the vellum can curl a little bit. So if you're generous with the adhesive, it'll lay down, especially around the edges. This will clean up easiest if you let it dry and then pick it up with like packing tape. And I will put my hummingbird on the Calypso Coral. And so we do have some thinlits that will cut the hummingbird out and the flower out. And there's a label that comes with it. I did not purchase it as a bundle. I actually got this stamp at convention. I got it for free. Yay, I won it. And so I have ordered the framelit that has not yet arrived. As I mentioned, the eye tends to kind of disappear. And so I'm just I can see where it is. I'm just kind of highlighting it with a journaling pen. I want to add my label with dimensionals. But because I have one layer of dimensionals here, I want to put 2 dimensionals stacked up on this side. So I just want to remove the backing and then add the second dimensional and 1 dimensional on this side. If you're putting it through the mail though, you probably want to only have 1 dimensional thickness. Otherwise it'll be extra postage. So I'll put it there. And then I want to add some rhinestones, but I do want the rhinestones color coordinated, so I'm using my Stampin' Blends, my dark Calypso Coral, and I'm just coloring my rhinestones. You can see I've already got the middle size colored, and I'll do 1 of each size. And then I'm picking it up with my Take Your Pick tool. Love this tool. This tool has a little bit of putty, and you can just push it on and then slide it. Since the adhesive is stronger adhesive than the putty, the rhinestones stay where you want them. Since this is a fairly dark color, I'm going to add some Whisper White that is 5 1/4 by 4. And there you go. Here's the link for the free directions, and I sell the Stampin' Up! Products you've seen in this video. Just click the links for the products you'd like to purchase, and you'll be taken to my online store at Stampin' Up! You'll also find lots of free resources, as well as a few additional products to help crafters stay organized. More organization means more time for crafting. I lead a team of other crafters. The team is called SIP Together, and it stands for Stamp, Ink, and Paper Together. The team is made of crafters who want to save money on the products they buy, share with a few friends, or to grow a business like mine. If you're interested in attending a class here in Ventura County, learning more about creating beautiful handmade projects, purchasing products, or joining my SIP Together team, please email me or visit my website at bevadams.com. Whether we sip water, coffee, tea, or wine, the important thing is to put stamps, ink, and paper together and do something creative.